Hello, everybody. My name is Greg Cooper from Front of My Coaching. I'm a LinkedIn specialist based in Bristol in the UK. If you don't know where that is, Bristol's about 120 miles due west of London. So we're all a bit bleary-eyed here in the UK. Half of us stayed up late into the night to watch the election results, and the other half got up really early to listen to the election results. So I got some matchsticks in my eyes today. But I'm really pleased to say that this Hangout is going to be all about LinkedIn blogging, and hopefully we can share with you some of the secrets to very successful LinkedIn blogging so that you can understand what it takes to get your LinkedIn blog to take off, to really fly, and in some cases to become stratospheric. We got some tremendous guests on the program today. I'm very pleased to have Marc Miller from Career Pivot. Marc is in Austin, Texas. Marc has written a number of posts which have gone viral, including one post which had over 600,000 views. I'm very jealous. So good morning, Marc, and welcome.
Well, thank you. Um, yeah, I'm based in Austin. I guess you'd say I'm a career coach. I focus on baby boomers. And I started blogging on LinkedIn last July. And since then, I've done 21 posts. The cumulative generated about 1.6 to 1.7 million views.
That's great. I'm going to come back to you in a moment, Marc. I'm just going to introduce each member of the panel, and then we're going to come back to Marc, and Marc's going to share a little bit more what his formula for this fantastic success is. So thank you. So we have Paul Shapiro from Catalyst. He's the SEO director at Catalyst, and Marc is in Boston. Good morning, Marc. Good morning, Paul.
Hi, everyone.
How are you today?
Oh, it's a nice day out. Great weather.
Yeah, great. Oh, it's pretty cloudy here, so I'm jealous of that too. And then our final guest is in Calgary, and that's Randy Milanovic, and Randy is the principal of Kayak Online Marketing. Good morning, Randy.
Hey, how's it going, Greg?
Yeah, good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. It's actually pretty nice here today. We did have a snow last night, but it looks like it's going to turn into a beautiful day.
Yeah, and we both had elections, I believe, haven't we? You've had an election in your state. Yeah, okay, so that's the last we're going to talk about politics today. Great.
We'll just say shocker, that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. Unexpected results all around, I think.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do, I'm going to go back to each of the panelists, and I'm going to ask them to talk a little bit about their experience, give their insights into what makes for a successful LinkedIn blog. And then when we've done that, we're going to open things up for a bit of discussion, so the panelists might have questions for each other, or they might want to challenge some things that each other said. I will also do my best to pick up some comments from the thread. So if you're watching live and you want to make some comments, then I will come to your thread, and we'll try and introduce some of the comments to the panel as well. So back to Marc. Marc, I apologize for interrupting you earlier on.
No problem.
We had a fascinating discussion earlier in the week, and I'm really impressed with some of the results you've had on LinkedIn. Could you share with us, please, a little bit more about how you've done that and what you consider is to be your formula that has been so successful, please?
Yeah, one of the things I started from the very beginning is I would only post good content. In other words, stuff that I'd already used on my blog. I also blogged for a while on the personal branding blog. And only things that had been successful did I put up on LinkedIn Publisher. And I've been doing it pretty consistently every 2 weeks. I post it Monday morning, 8 a.m. And what I have found is, number one, produce good content. The amount of crap that's out there, and it's not important what you think, it's what your readership thinks. Every time I've gone away from, oh, I have this great content and I'm going to produce it and it's going to do well, but didn't do well before, it bombed. I did a one on what was it? What I learned about corporate culture from my cats. Brilliant. It was brilliant stuff. No one cared. So if I go back and if I look at, I've had 3 blog posts that have, 2 that have hit close to 600,000 and 1 that got close to 400,000. And the the common theme among them was, number one, I said something that everyone knew and no one was willing to say. So the first one was the 5 things on your resume that say you're too old. The one that really, the fifth one is what really hit people, which was telling people to stop using two spaces after a period. You would have thought I told people to draw comics of Muhammad. But what happened was people started sharing it. And they shared it, and they shared it. And it generated literally thousands of comments. So I spoke at South by Southwest this year, and I got a free interactive pass. So I went and attended a session by BuzzFeed on shareability. And the key piece here is to understand your audience and what's going to get them to share the content, because that's what's going to get you views. And like we were talking before, I did one this week that had done well on my blog, which was the 3 signs you're institutionalized, which works really well for my audience of baby boomers. But put it bluntly, the larger audience didn't care. And there wasn't enough there to get them to share it, even though it was based on Shawshank Redemption and Brooks being institutionalized. I even had a video clip in there. I mean, people who saw it said, wow, this is cool. But, so it's a matter of, and oh, by the way, I state the obvious, and I don't give you a solution. The ones that I have not given the solution get people chiming in to give solutions. Now, the other piece is my goal is to get people to go to my website. So what I do at the end of each link, at the end of each section, is I put a more link. In other words, I don't embed links inside the text. I say more, and then give you a full title of a blog post. People will click on that. Because my goal is to get people to go back to my website. I have a client who's trying to reinsert him back into a certain industry. He's just trying to get certain individuals to read his post. He doesn't care how many. He wants a few thought leaders in the industry he wants back in to read it. And he has been successful. So one of the things you have to really think about is, what is your end game? What is your goal? And it isn't necessarily views. It may very well, in my case, I want traffic. Every time I've had something gone viral, you know, and not every post is, the viral ones tend to drive the most traffic, but I've had one that generated about 50,000 views, but it generated about 10,000, 15,000 links back to my website. Per view, it generated a lot more traffic. That's good.
How important, Mark, do you think that the channels are and getting aligned with the channels? And
as we just saw this week, we were talking about before, I'm just about every post I have now is on a Pulse channel. In my opinion, it is absolutely imperative. And so what I've been telling people to do is go look at the Pulse channel you want to get onto. Mine tends to be the Careers Next Level, which has 300,000 to 400,000 followers. And go look at the non-influencers. And what are they doing? Because that will give you a hint as to what the editors are picking. Because to get on a Pulse channel, an editor actually has to pick your material.
And if anybody's wondering where the where to find these channels, if you go to the interest bar on the menu, and then to Pulse, and then to Discover, you'll see a list of the channels.
Yeah. So again, a lot of now with all the new statistics, go look at your posts, see where they're coming from, see where the traffic is coming from. My one that I've had a couple of posts that have gone viral. They're still generating 200 and 300 views per week, which is really quite fascinating.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because the analytics just yesterday, LinkedIn, I think, must have known we were doing this Hangout today because they launched a new feature, which was blog post analytics. And you were saying, Mark, I believe that you were surprised how many of your posts had this kind of long tail, that they were still getting views many months after they were
yeah, the one I've got a couple that are generating 100 to 200 views per week, and it's like, wow, that surprised the crap out of me.
Excellent, thank you. So that's some fascinating insights there into what makes a blog really go stratospheric. Have a look at some of Mark's blogs. They are on a link in the thread. Really worth reading, and there's a lot to learn from that. And Mark will be coming back in later and answering some of your questions and joining the general discussion. I'd like to move to Paul now. Paul has probably produced what is the definitive study to date on LinkedIn, successful LinkedIn posts. Last year, he conducted an analysis of the top 3,000 most successful posts. So Paul knows a lot about what the factors are that lead to success on LinkedIn. I'm going to just hand over to Paul now and ask his experience on that, please.
Thanks, Greg. Just to clarify, my post doesn't necessarily indicate ranking factors or things that actually get your post moved into the pulse channels. But what it does do is look at what sort of factors seem to correlate with success for your LinkedIn posts. So just to jump into the data really quick, we see that posts that contain a lot of images don't necessarily do so well. Found around between like 4 to 8 images in your post do really well. Embedding things like SlideShare, which you would think would do really well because it's LinkedIn, tend to not do so well. I think people don't really want to get into a post and then click around into some other medium. How-to posts do really good, as do list posts. And fairly lengthy content seems to do really well. I found around like 1,900 to 2,000 words in a post seem to be correlated with the most post views. And also a fairly simple reading level. I use something called the Flesch-Kincaid algorithm, and it's sort of a way of through computer science assessing the reading level of your post. And for LinkedIn, the reading level seems to be that does well is one for that resonates with 11-year-olds.
That's a great tip, Paul. I like that one.
Thank you.
Yeah, look at your on WordPress. Look at your Fleisch scores. I mean on WordPress. Look at your Fleisch scores.
Cool. Interesting what you say also about images, Paul, because the conventional wisdom is, isn't it? The more images you put in, we're in a visual environment here. Everybody loves the images. Put images on Facebook, get lots of shares, and actually, what you found was that's not necessarily the case with LinkedIn blog posts.
Sure. Yeah, I was surprised to see it as well. That is not to say you should definitely include images in your post if you can. Just I limit the number of images you actually are including. Again, I think at the time the analysis was 8 images, which is actually kind of a lot. I went back and I expanded my data set to around 5,000, and this isn't actually published information. And I found when I expanded my data set that the number of images that actually did well was more like 4. So I think stick to around 4 in your post, and you should be good.
Did you do any looking at the hero images, the top image of the top?
I did not actually at the time of the research. You couldn't set a custom header image, and it was just whatever was the first image would appear in in the preview. And I think that actually has changed things a lot. One of the things I advocate for is including a call to action, getting people to not share or comment, but to actually give the thumbs up, like the post. So what I found was if you get people to like the post, which I think is a little bit easier to get people to do than comment or share, it's less invasive, then it appears on everyone else's feed, and it correlates with more page views, and you're more likely to be seen by other people. And what you can do now, you can set a header image, and that could be whatever it is, a custom image, and then you can do a little image that sort of like gestures towards the thumbs up icon. So you say, if you like my post, give me a like on my post, and sort of put an arrow pointing towards the like icon on the post. I think that does really well now with the header images.
We used to do that with Facebook.
Yeah.
We'll see how long it lasts.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So the strategy, the most successful strategy, is to go for getting people to like the post rather than necessarily to comment.
That's what I've seen work, at least with the clients that I've worked with. That's what I've been advocating for them to do, and it seems to work really well.
Interesting. And we were talking a bit this morning, Paul, about how the LinkedIn blogging platform has opened up. Originally, it was sort of 20,000, then 60,000 people. Now it's 230 million people who have access to it. And do you think that things have changed since some of the factors that you discovered last year for success? Do you think they still apply, or do you think some of those might have changed?
I think that more than likely they are pretty much the same. They've stayed consistent. Again, I wasn't looking at. I did a mixture of influencers and non-influencers, and this was things that sort of correlated with success. And I don't think those things have changed. The market may be more saturated, but those are still things that seem to correlate with a post that will do well.
So the formula you found, it probably still applies.
Yeah.
It's just that it's more competition.
Right.
Yeah.
It's more reason to try to look at these type of things when you're writing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you want to see Paul's research, there's a link in the thread. Please go and have a look. It's fascinating. And Paul will come back in shortly to join the discussion again. I want to move to Randy now. Hi, Randy. So
Hi there.
Randy has some interesting experience. So I've asked Randy to do a bit of the good, the bad, and the ugly here, because he's got some things on. He's got some views on how LinkedIn could perhaps improve the publishing feature. And he's also got some interesting comparisons of his experience. He's a very successful LinkedIn blogger, but he's also a very successful blogger on social media today. So he's able to give us a bit of comparison on alternative platforms there.
Yeah, honestly, I've never wanted to put all my eggs in one basket. So I've done a lot of blogging with social media today on my own blog, in LinkedIn. I actually followed the same formula originally as Marc did about posting or essentially syndicating my own content that it had done well. And as a result, I saw some pretty sizable views. I'm certainly not 600,000, but I've got 50, 10, things like that, that I think showed some pretty good engagement, which to me is a more important factor than views. Not that I'm not jealous of those views, I tell you. That's pretty impressive. But honestly, I'm posting to get engagement, and I want to pull people back to contact me and engage with me. That's my goal. There is no other goal. If I get 20 views and a couple of likes and 5 of those people talk to me, I'm a pretty happy camper. So and now if I had 600,000 views and I got 100,000 people talk to me, I guess I'd be that much more happy. But I'll take that. Paul mentioned a little while ago about people wanting the longer form content, or at least responding to it, multiple images, not too many, a longer form. That actually supports one of the views that I have as well, where I look at LinkedIn or even Google Plus and whatnot as really as destinations where people will consume a full article, and maybe they're not as interested in the teasers. So I see a lot of people will do a teaser, they'll do a paragraph or two, and then they'll come and visit my blog. I think in those situations people feel a little bit ripped off, that they took the time to read it and then just got forwarded to another blog. Now, I think where Marc was talking about doing that, I think he actually put a full post and then prompted people to go to their site, which is, I feel, is excellent strategy. So, for example, when I do a post, at the bottom of it, you'll always see a call to action. There's, good old marketing. Call this number or click that link or whatever we're going to do. Let's take them to a download that's related. Let's take them to another article. let's include a link to the original, because of course LinkedIn doesn't do the canonical. So let's manually put it in. So let's do those kind of things, and hopefully that encourages more engagement that goes beyond the views to actual business generating opportunities. And I guess so for me in the end, I'm willing to engage, and I love to engage, and if I tell you, if people even say thank you, I'm going to probably go in there and say, okay, thanks for the thanks. What are you thanking me for? Let's find out what's going on. What motivated you to say that? I'm really interested in that. When I do that, I find that I have an opportunity to build a bit of a relationship. From that, then people tend to come to my site even more. And of course, that's all good news for us, because as people come to our site, they start to see just the quantity of good quality content there, how much people can learn, tools people can use for free. So really, that's what I'm using my content for, is really to establish that there's content and there's tools and things like that that people can use in their businesses. And just on that note, my audience is actually marketers, believe it or not. Marketing to the marketers. I want to give them tools that they can use. When they're happy, they like the tools that I have, they like the content, the commentaries that I have. Generally, if they follow up and they start telling other people about the services we do, and the next thing you know, we're doing a website for them and engaging, and right from a marketing level right through to helping them with their engagement. So for me, it's great. So there was one thing I wanted to talk about when I was talking about doing multiple platforms, and that's really around the thought around duplicate content and syndication. I know there's a lot of people that are a bit gun-shy about posting content to more than one place, mainly because they could have a similar readership and it would appear like they were spamming. Another one is they think that they're going to be penalized by Google for duplicate content. In my situation, or in my experience, neither is true. I have very little overlap from one platform to another, maybe about 10%. So there may be a few people that see that I've posted the same article into LinkedIn Pulse as I've posted on my blog or posted into Google+. The reality of it is people will engage me on the platform of their choice, but by doing so, I have an opportunity to have greater exposure to more people and draw more conversations and whatnot. I did a test last. I'm just going to check my timing here on this. It was in January, where I published a post and I did a little test. And what I did is I picked 5 different places that I would post the same article, just to see what kind of engagement I got off it and what kind of feedback I got. Well, the first place I posted it was on my blog. The second place is I did a syndication in the Social Media Today, which essentially duplicated the blog. In that was a manually set canonical. And then I posted the same article into LinkedIn Pulse, and again, a manually placed canonical. Then took about 90% of the post and posted it into Google+, including some customization to talk to my connections there, because I have actually much greater relationships in Google+ than elsewhere. So I just find that the barriers to engagement are quite a bit lower there. You can actually have conversations pretty easily. So then, of course, I took a shot at doing a medium syndication of it. The combined total drove about 8 times my normal shares and engagement, which I thought was pretty good for 5 times the posting and to get 8 times the engagement. And it was all quality engagement. So I thought, you know what? I don't mind if Google doesn't give me credit on a link, because that wasn't the goal. The goal was to get engagement.
Yeah, it's not about the views, is it? Actually,
yeah.
It's the engagement. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I really
I still want 600,000 views.
yeah, it's nice. Yeah, one of the things I really like about LinkedIn is you get fantastic engagement when you post. We were talking earlier about the new LinkedIn analytics, which I'll post to people who haven't seen it yet. Yeah, I'll post it. The link to that. I think it's available to everybody now. But what I was interested in that was the fact that the number of I use a product called Share Metric to show me how many. It's a Chrome app to show me how many times my LinkedIn posts and other posts have been shared. And I was interested that the LinkedIn stats didn't correspond to the Share Metric stats. on specifically on shares. So on one post, for example, LinkedIn was showing 45 shares, and on Sharemetric, which normally is pretty accurate, it was showing 773.
Yeah.
Quite a big difference. So I don't know. I don't know why that is. I don't understand that. A couple of questions we have in the thread here, and one goes back to your comment, I think, Randy. Juan Carlos Giraldo says, should we write the whole post on LinkedIn or just an abstract with the original link? And I think you were addressing that earlier on, weren't you, Randy?
Yeah, I think, and Paul as well. I love the idea of putting my full post in there. And as a reader, I like to go there and read a full post. I don't want to read a part of it and then go to another place. So I totally support what Paul says on that. I tell you, when I do get a paragraph or two and then a link to a website, I immediately stop. I don't go back to that. So it's basically, I think it's a pretty well a waste of my time.
I'd like to just put a few shout outs to people who are watching. So hi to Rain Dahl. And Rain says she's asking a question here, which I think Paul's probably answered as well, actually. It's recommended on Google Plus to write a grade 8 level. Would you recommend this as well on LinkedIn, Paul?
That sounds about right. Maybe even a little bit younger. So the data that I collected said that age 11 is optimal. So what is that for grade 5 about 4 or 5?
I think it's the nature of being able to scan quickly. I think that might be a part of writing to the lower level.
Yeah, formatting's important as well, isn't it? Easy to read format.
Let me add, there have been several things written here recently about the fact that there was an NPR article about the fact that we read differently online than we do on paper.
Yeah.
We get easily distracted. So number one, when you're writing, you want to write shorter sentences, more white space, simple grammar. I come out of the tech world. I've been through a couple of tech startups, and when we wrote documentation, it was for a 6th to 8th grade level. Because you're also going to an international audience where very well the audience English may not be their first language.
Yeah.
And so therefore, writing with a 29 average word sentence length and with college level vocabulary doesn't work.
Yeah. I support that entirely. I'm also a big fan of bite-sized chunks. So short paragraphs, give it some space, insert your subheads, insert another image, just keep drawing people down the page. Too much gray is just a great way to make people look away.
Yes.
How important is it that you've already got an established network to get your post flying on LinkedIn? We haven't talked about that specifically. Paul mentioned the fact of trying to encourage people to do likes to get the social sharing. But how important is it to start with a reasonably robust network?
Well, one of the interesting things for me has been the number of followers I now have has grown fourfold since I started. So I'm up to about 12 to 15, I've looked at it recently, 13, 14, 15,000 followers. So as soon as I post, it shows up in their stream. I've also, every time I get a whole bunch of people who send me their LinkedIn connections. In general, depending on where they're from, I'll accept and then send them a message saying, "How'd you find me?"
Yeah.
Right.
When I joined Pulse, I got the invitation. At that time, I had about 2,500 connections, and when I was invited to Pulse, it automatically added those connections. And then I've grown about 1,000 since then. So it's not big numbers, but right. I'm loving the fact that the numbers that are there are fairly well engaged.
Paul, did you get any insights into this from your research?
Sure. So one of the things I looked at is not just relying on the LinkedIn audience you have, but sort of seeing how it helps if you cross promote it on maybe other social channels. So I was looking at if you have a large following on Facebook, cross-posting it to Facebook or Twitter or Google Plus, and I think I saw some of the greatest success out of Twitter. I don't know if that means that maybe it's a more technical savvy audience or not, but it was pretty highly correlated between views and tweets. I think I got for the view metric, there was a correlation of 0.8, which is pretty high. That's out of a 1.0 scale. So definitely think about cross-posting your LinkedIn things on other social networks. Wherever you have your audience, that's where you want to put it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a question about who should be writing on LinkedIn, because the LinkedIn blog post obviously appears on the individual LinkedIn profile, and if you're in a company with a number of employees, that there's a question mark about who actually does post. And I wondered what you guys thought about that, what your recommendations would be.
Anybody can talk coherently.
Yeah.
I'm in the career space, and one of the key pieces for people to be able to manage their career is, I always say, how do I know you know your stuff? So the first thing is to post on your LinkedIn profile existing work product, things that should demonstrate your expertise. But put it bluntly, I've worked in a number of startups and very highly confidential. I couldn't do that. So start writing about things that show your expertise. And
do you think LinkedIn? Do you think LinkedIn is the best place for that versus you can also show your expertise on a personal blog or on another medium?
There are two pieces to it. I wrote a blog post on a gentleman who wanted to change industries. And he's a product manager. And what Daniel did was he created his own blog called Technical Product Management. And he started interviewing. He wanted to get into SmartGrid, so he started interviewing people and in SmartGrid. And after 18 months, it got him street cred. Brilliant move. Now, is the fact that he was technical savvy enough to go do that and was willing to put in the work. I've got another client right now who's trying to get back into the media business, and I just have him writing on LinkedIn Publisher. Maybe some point in time in the future he creates his own blog, but it's an easy entry, and he's mostly writing on things that he sees, and writing posts. And as I said, he's had a couple of people at some of these major firms retweet his stuff, which says they actually looked at it, which is what he wants, right?
I got another question from Juan Carlos here, actually. He asks, is it okay to get someone to do a guest blog on your LinkedIn blog?
I don't know. Is that within the rules?
I'm not entirely sure. I'm not entirely sure. I will have to check on that. It's something I should know. I assume that you have to have original content, but I'll have to go back to look at the guidelines on that one.
Yeah. There was one instance where I had a young fellow right out of college just wanted to talk about writing stories or letters by hand to his family members as opposed to using social media. And of course, for somebody just out of college, their world is in social. So that was quite a different thing than see somebody actually would write by hand. And he had no presence at all. And I said, and I actually offered to post his article on my LinkedIn Pulse, and he sent it to me, and I posted it. And I actually got zero engagement on it. Nobody was interested in it at all. And I suspect the reason was that it wasn't me, and it was a stranger. So I don't know if it was against the rules or not, but we ended up taking it down just because it really didn't work.
Yeah, I think
it was actually a really wonderful story.
Sorry, Randy. I think part of LinkedIn is that there's a person attached to it, very very much so. So those LinkedIn posts are supposed to be coming from Randy. It's got your face next to the post. It's very much associated with you. So I sort of suspect that maybe guest posting wouldn't be as successful on LinkedIn as it would be on like a personal blog or another type of blogging platform.
And of course, my opening line is a guest post from the fellow, and I think that probably killed it. Yeah. So apologies to him. We got him. We coached him into doing some other stuff, though, so it worked out.
But we're coming towards the end of the Hangout session, but I've got a couple of questions. And one that I know a lot of people will be asking is, or a lot of people ask me certainly, about a duplication issue. So if you've touched on this briefly, Randy, but if you publish on your website and then you republish on LinkedIn blog, and I know that you do this, Mark, are there any downsides to that, and how do you manage that?
I see no downsides at all. I see, first of all, Google's perspective is that duplicate content happens. People are doing quotes, people are sharing things like this all the time. So it's not a matter of that being the issue. The issue is when people are scraping content or borrowing your content and putting their name on it, things like that. That's when it becomes an issue. Or if you're doing it for the SEO value. So you're posting it to, say, a lot of different WordPress installations just to try to create links. Those are definitely going to get you a little rap on the wrist and more from Google. But when you're talking to your audience and you're engaging with them, I don't think there's any issue at all. If I don't get an SEO juice out of a link, I don't care because I'm actually talking to the people I want to talk to.
All right. And from my SEO perspective, I don't see much of an issue with it. I think the worst case scenario that you might see is if you do a Google search that's related to your post, and you're syndicating it, that LinkedIn post might appear higher in the search results than it would on your blog, and maybe depending on what your goals is, that's undesirable. But in general, there's no issue with it.
Yeah, I don't care which post comes up. If it comes up, I'm happy because it's all got my name attached to it. It's got my links.
Right.
They can find me.
I completely agree. When I started doing this, people said, "Oh, you're going to create all kinds of problems." And I said, "But I get all these great views, the traffic coming back to my site. They buy my book. I get new clients. So what's wrong with this?"
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it. You know, I mean, there may be scenarios in which it is undesirable. If you're an e-commerce business and there's sort of a barrier entry to purchase, and you try to promote your business, maybe it would do better on a blog that's nested on the same domain as your e-commerce business. But if you're talking about like a coaching business or just a personal brand, then there's absolutely no problem with it. You want that engagement wherever it comes from.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and to me that's the entire goal of anything social. Any of my blogging, it's for the engagement. There's the opportunity to meet more people who are actually interested in what we're doing, and people who can contribute something where I can find interest in there as well, just like the three of you.
Great. And one last question, and then we must wrap up. And the question is really, where do you see LinkedIn blog being in 1 year's time? Are we going to be sitting here saying, wow, LinkedIn blog is fantastic, it's been really successful, or are we going to say, actually, they killed the golden goose? It became saturated, too many people blogging, quality went down. Where do you think we're going to be with that?
I think that's already happening, Greg. I think that the influx of people posting, I've seen that my views and shares have dropped pretty consistently over time. The trade-off is that I have got some pretty good engagement, and I've been able to create conversations even in other platforms from it. So for me, it's been a dwindling of views, but better engagement.
Thank you. Paul?
Yeah.
I think it's very reasonable to assume that there might be some advertising component tied to it at some point. LinkedIn advertising is definitely part of their business model. And when you have an ecosystem where you're fighting for attention, advertising is a viable model to be using. And since LinkedIn already has its own advertising, so I think it makes sense that they might tie you know,
Promoted emails recently.
similar to what like Facebook is doing with their own content.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about
Yeah.
that perspective. And Mark?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. All of, as I've learned from the BuzzFeed session I went to, when you write for shareability, you're going to write a lot of duds before you get some home runs. American acronym there, and so my shares has been going up and down, middle, all over the place, and so it's all been a learning experience. Where will things be in a year? You got me. A year, 18 months ago, I was getting about 40% of my traffic off LinkedIn groups. Well, that ain't anymore. And so they'll change something. For good or for bad, I have no idea. I just know it'll be different.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I definitely agree. So thank you very much to the panel. I hope you've enjoyed it if you're watching live or if you're watching this on catch up. I hope you enjoyed the insights that have been shown by these three really knowledgeable guys. There are links in the thread which you can go and look at their blogs and go and look at Paul's research and go and catch up with what Randy's been posting about. And thank you very much for joining us and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you very much, panel.